Hello, this is your host, Austin Hopkins, and welcome to the Introvert Leader Podcast. Welcome to the podcast. I'm happy to have you guys here today. And today's episode, we're going to be talking about managing older or more experienced employees. I know I've been there myself. It's awkward. It's a little uncomfortable. You don't really know what you're doing, but I want to break down kind of what I've done in the past. I have some strategies I can share, some things that I know work, some things to avoid. So really pumped to kind of get into that in just a second. But before we do, I always like to give you a quick update on what I've been into recently. So music-wise, I don't know if you're like me, but I've been listening to that new Eminem album, the one that just dropped a week ago. And I got to tell you, I liked it overall. I can't say it's my favorite Eminem album, but I thought there were some good songs. I really enjoyed Fuel. I enjoyed Toby. Renaissance was another good one. So some good songs on there. Kind of interesting to see his kind of older style mixed with his new style. So if you haven't listened to it and you're an Eminem fan, I think you'd probably enjoy it. Okay, YouTube content. So I really like this guy named Nick DiGiovanni, and he got his start on Gordon Ramsay's Master Chef. I don't know, maybe 5 to 7 years ago. Me and my wife randomly watched an episode with him in it. We don't watch that show normally, but instantly this guy kind of caught our attention. Super funny, young, and incredibly talented as well. So he does cooking videos. He uses a ton of humor. They're easy to get into. And it's kind of cool to watch him get his start on MasterChef, then go into YouTube and kind of see where his channels went overall. Definitely an inspiration for someone like myself who maybe one day wants to lean into YouTube more and make that more of a bigger part of his business. So if you haven't watched Nick's content, highly recommend. Very, very entertaining. Okay, TV and movies. We recently binge watched the show Outer Range. Western, takes place in, modern day America, I think in like Wyoming or Montana, one of those two. Great cast. Josh Brolin is kind of leading it off. It's an action thriller with twists and turns. There's some sci-fi stuff. It's on Amazon. Check it out. I think you're going to like it. Okay, moving on. One quick update for me. I'm actually excited to announce that I'm going to be hosting my first kind of webinar or live event in August. So this event is going to be all about building confidence. I put out a poll on LinkedIn to find out what are the things people really want to get help with. And this overwhelmingly came up as one of the most important things that people are struggling with or want to learn more about. So more details to come. Obviously, I'll update you guys as soon as I know more, but it's going to be free. It's going to be in August, probably going to be like 30 minutes to an hour. And it's going to be just packed with strategies to help you build confidence. Because I really believe no matter what age you are, no matter where you work, what your background is, you can build confidence. It just takes some, intentionality, if that makes sense. So really excited to tell you more about that as it comes out. Okay, what I want to do now is transition into a listener Q&A. So today's question is, what are some effective ways to network and build professional connections in a especially digital age? So, I think of people that are working remote or people that only come into the office a couple of times per week. I know, for example, my wife, most of her team works in New York, right? So definitely spread apart. And I think for me, the big thing, and again, this is going to be coming from an introvert, so it might be different for an extrovert, but for me, it's about being intentional and connecting when necessary, and then find ways to stay in contact. So, whether that's sending a random email here and there, or an IM just to check in, or shouting them out on the internal company website, right? Check in semi-regularly, be intentional, connect with people you actually find interesting or you want to learn from, and don't overthink it, right? Everyone's really busy, so as long as you're putting in a little effort to check in time to time, I think you're going to be good. I don't think you got to worry about it. So today, I want to talk about managing older or more experienced employees. And you might ask, why do we want to talk about this? Why is this important? And, for me, I think it can be kind of overwhelming. When I first started, it was very overwhelming. It was nerve-wracking. You're worried that your team's judging you. You're worried that they won't listen or follow your leadership. And basically what I want to do is help those who are going through this scenario, or maybe someone who knows someone who's going through this scenario, get past the stressing out phase and really help them or you learn how to lead older or more experienced employees. And I want to let you in on a little secret though, so listen up. The principles of effective leadership work for older, younger, inexperienced, and experienced employees alike. there's no difference. So half the battle is just getting out of your head, right? Effective leadership is going to be effective leadership. Doesn't matter who it is. So I want you to remember that. And that's my little secret. Don't tell anyone. Shh. So moving on, I want to kick things off by what I think is really, really important when you come in a new place, and that's establishing your set of values, what you're going to be known for, and leading by examples. So as a less experienced leader, it's so important that you have something to be known for. As a leader, our teams watch and emulate our behaviors and actions. I think you know that, right? And I learned really on that having like a set of core values, things that I'm going to do or be known for, and then leading by example by living those out, really separated good leaders from great leaders. So to kick things off, I think it's so important to create a set of core values. And I keep saying that. Well, what does that mean, Austin? So these values should be words or phrases or things that define who you are, who you want to be, how you want to act, how you want to treat people. So here's what I want you to do. I want you to define exactly what you're going to be known for and how you're going to operate at work. I want you to take time to think about the end of your life, maybe your funeral, right? Let's say you're at your funeral and everyone's there around, the casket talking about, well, gosh, who was this guy? Who was this girl? What were they about? What do you want those people to say? Do you want those people to say the things that you are right now? Do you want to be a little bit different? Do you want to hold yourself to a higher standard? I think you got to think about those things and ask those things to yourself, right? For me, I decided I wanted to define myself by 11 words. So I took a lot of time to come up with these. I asked for feedback from my friends and family. I tried to look at my own life with a really kind of a fine-tooth comb, and here are the 11 words that describe what I would say are my core set of values. So number one is why. The why is I want to figure out what my why is. I want to lead with my why. I want to talk about my why. And again, my why is to help folks become the best version of themselves. The next one's efficiency. I want to be efficient. I don't want to do a whole bunch of extra work for no reason. I want my work to be very, very efficient so that I can spend more time on things that matter. Vision is the next one. I wanted my leadership to be so full of vision that people could follow it a mile away. Even if they weren't on the team, they would know what my team's about, what my vision is, what I'm trying to achieve. The next one's value. I think that one's pretty self-explanatory. If you're adding value at every single moment in your career, you're going to do fine. Feedback, this was another one. So I wanted to make sure that I was not only asking for feedback, that I was also giving feedback. I think that's a super, super important part of leadership and just career development in general. Care, I wanted my teammates to know I cared for them as people, not just employees. I wanted them to know that I genuinely cared about who they are, what they had going on in their life, what was their struggles are, what they were going through as a human being first, and then an employee second. Follow through, it's kind of two words, but I'll consider it one. Follow through. When I said I'm going to do something, I wanted to follow through. I wanted to actually do what I said I was going to do. This is a big deal for leaders. They forget to do this. They don't follow through. They come up with these ideas. They say they're going to do things, and they got so much other stuff on their plate, and they don't follow through. So I wanted to make sure I was one of those that follow through. Trust is another one. Self-explanatory. Respect, curiosity, and humility. Those are the last three that I think really kind of embodied who I wanted to be and what my leadership style was going to be. And the reason I think it's so important to come up with these things is if you have something that's going to ground you, that's going to allow you to keep focusing on what matters, as new stressors come up, new projects, new things of just life that get in the way, you're going to have something to ground yourself and go back to over and over again. You can ask yourself questions like, hey, this week, was I actually leading my team with humility, or was I kind of being cocky and trying to steal the spotlight? Or, okay, this week, did I really care for Tony on my team? Did I actually show Tony that I cared about him? Right? You can ask yourself these questions, but I think it's so important that you create a set of core values when you're leading older employees, because this is going to show them that you're actually there to be intentional and that you actually care about holding yourself to a higher standard. And then I think, speaking of a higher standard, leading by example. As a leader, it's so crucial that we lead by example. We can't preach or expect stuff from our teams, but then not hold ourselves accountable. So if you want your team to show each other grace or forgiveness, you need to show that first. You need to demonstrate that. If you want your team to be okay with being vulnerable, you need to express that. You need to get vulnerable first. If you want your team to be in the habit of recognizing each other, you're going to need to show that. If you want your team to not gossip, then you need to avoid gossip, right? So all of these things are going to start with you. So those core values, if you can live those out, whatever those are going to be for you, you're holding yourself accountable. And then in turn, the people around you, even your older teammates, are going to see that and they're going to respect that and then want to also do that as well. So super important. Establish yourself a set of values, what you're going to be known for, and then lead by example. Act those out. I'm not demanding perfection. It's impossible, as you know, but you can definitely put in a lot of effort and show the people around you that you care about being the best version of yourself. Okay, I want to move on slightly. And this next topic is around acting the part. So I think acting the part is pretty important. So half the battle of leadership is kind of just acting the part, right? Leaders are just people like everyone else, right? They make mistakes. We get insecure. We're not smarter or more capable than anyone. But a lot of times we kind of expect leaders to be the best of the best. And I think a lot of that just comes down to how we carry ourselves as leaders. So as a leader, I need you to act the part, especially when you're managing older, more experienced employees, because I hate to say it, but they can smell weakness and they can kind of see when you're in over your head. So 4 things that I think are really important when it comes to acting the part. Number 1 is you got to act mature and don't date yourself. When I say date yourself, don't give away your age. So the less you bring attention to being younger or less experienced, the better. And the best way to do that is to speak and act with maturity. So some examples are avoiding, tons of young lingo. So phrases that older folks may not understand or that really kind of show your age. Watch older teammates and more mature leaders to see how they act and then emulate that, right? How do they carry themselves? What are the things they talk about? How do they lead meetings? How do they interact with clients? Watch those things. And that will help you start to kind of talk the talk and blend in more with those more experienced employees. And I would also say on a side note, dial up the professionalism a little bit. Don't act like a kid at work. You don't want to be immature. You want to get rid of any immaturity you can. You don't want to give those people around you, those older or more experienced employees, any reason to doubt your abilities. And even if you're the most amazing leader in the world, but you start acting immature at work, what do you think they're going to think about you? So you got to keep your eye on those kind of things. So act mature, don't date yourself. The next one is act with humility. Your older, more experienced employees don't want to work with a cocky youngin', right? You're going to lose them faster than you can imagine with a boastful, cocky, I'm better than you attitude. I'm young and I've got it all figured out. I'm your boss. That ain't going to work. You are going to turn them off so freaking quick. So come in with a mindset of learning rather than showboating or teaching. Show the team that you don't know it all and that you're willing to learn. I'm telling you, even if you know stuff, kind of milking it a little bit, if that makes sense, goes a long way. There were sometimes things I knew probably be better than my employees, but I noticed that they wanted to tell me something or teach me their experience, and I listened. I didn't act like, oh my gosh, I already know this, right? So those little things matter. The next one I think that's really important is be confident / take a stand, or don't be a pushover. You could call it all 3 of those things. So being confident is going to be the key when stepping into a leadership situation like this. With a lack of confidence, employees are going to think that you're a pushover, and they may start to test boundaries. So it's really important that you come in with confidence and a little swag. Now, again, I said come in with humility, but that doesn't mean you're not confident. Humility is, and how I view it, is saying, I know I'm so good, I don't need to brag about it. I'm confident that my value speaks for itself. So come in with a little swag. And at the end of the day, there's a reason you were asked to take on a leadership role, even though you're a little younger or that you have a little less experience. So remember that and lean into that. You're there. You deserved it, right? So enjoy that. And, I think things like taking a stand or holding the team accountable are also going to be super important. And this is how you're going to earn their respect. So, don't be a pushover. If there's things that you see your older employees doing that isn't up to your expectations, you're going to need to give them feedback, even though they're older. And if you don't do that, that will become an issue later. So there's no halfway in or out. You're either the leader or you're not. Okay? Super important to remember that. So be confident, take a stand, don't be a pushover. And I think another interesting way to act the part is to become an SME, a subject matter expert. And I got to say, this portion is special thanks to my good friend Alex for this idea. He really helped bring it into perspective for me. And essentially becoming an expert on something will give you a confidence boost and will help you step into that leadership role the right way. So it's interesting, when you're an SME, when you're a subject matter expert on something, it helps you get buy-in and build credibility, right? We like to follow people that know something we don't. So if you come in and you know something that even your older or more experienced employees don't know, they're still going to be able to learn from you. I remember I had some teams where I was the sales manager and I would have some older employees and, I could still teach them something because sales was my thing. That's what I spent, 10 years doing. Door-to-door sales was how I got my start in my career. So I don't want to say I'm a sales expert, but I definitely have mastered the sales process, at least in the industries that I worked in, right? So pick one thing that you want to be really good at and then study it, practice it, and then help your team learn something from you. When you become an SME, I'm telling you, that's going to give you a little bit of that swag. That's going to give you some confidence. And it's going to allow the people around you to say, okay, hey, there's a reason Austin got into this leadership role at such a young age. He's got something to teach that maybe I don't know. So really, really important stuff. Act the part. That's half the battle. If you're a leader, act like a leader. Don't be immature about the fact that you're young. That's not going to help you. You don't want people to see that. Hide that shit. Okay, so moving on, I want to talk about something called situational leadership. You've heard me mention it before, super important when it comes to leading older employees and just in leadership in general. But the most important leadership style is situational. Instead of expecting your older and more experienced employees to adapt to you, do the opposite and adapt to them. So here's what I would do. 3 things I would focus on. Number 1, evaluate each employee. When you start working with your new team, you need to spend significant time upfront figuring out who your employee is. What are their strengths? What are their opportunities? What are their tendencies? What do they want or need, aka their career desires or specific needs? And those things, if you can figure them out, are going to help you tremendously adapt your style. So, example, schedule some time with every employee one-on-one and ask them questions. Watch them in action. The more you can learn about each employee up front allows you to give them exactly what they need. The more tailored support, advice, and recognition, the better. I want them to feel like I'm working for them and give them exactly what they need. They're my client. Okay, the next one is give each employee exactly what they need. Pretty self-explanatory, but once you have an understanding of the folks on your team, start giving them what they need. Whether that be recognition, reassurance, coaching, career advancement opportunities, new projects to take on, you name it. The more you give them exactly what they need, the more value they're going to produce and the more fulfillment they're going to feel. And at the end of the day, I really think that's what leadership is. How do I get the most from my people while making them the happiest or the most fulfilled at the same time? That's what this is, right? Next and final one for situational leadership is get out of the way of those more experienced top performers. So in many cases, not in every case, but in many cases, the older, more experienced employees can be top performers. I've worked with so many folks that are, in their 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s when I was in my 20s that I thought, okay, there's a reason these people are in the jobs they're at. They're top performers. And if you have any of those on your team, just get out of their way. Chances are they know what they're doing. And the more you can just block for them and stay out of the way, the better. Now, I don't mean ignoring them, not holding them accountable. What I'm saying is focus your attention, focus your energy on maybe other employees that are struggling more, that need more help, right? And so here would be an example. If you're working with a guy who's been a marketing manager for 10 years, he's the man, everybody knows it, everybody says he's the best. If I were his manager, honestly, what I would do is just look for ways to allow him to do his thing. How can I allow him to spend more time on the things that he's already really good at? I wouldn't try to spend much time coaching an employee like that, right? I would instead focusing on what I can learn and glean from them and then teach that to the other employees on the team. Maybe I have him teach some of those things. So again, getting out of the way of those top performers is going to make them feel so much better working for you, and they're going to forget about the age because it's going to show, okay, this guy's got some leadership skills. He understands that I don't need a ton of help, and he's kind of letting me do my own thing because at the end of the day, that's kind of what we all want in a company or in a role or department is autonomy. We want to be able to go into work, do our own thing, produce the value in our own way, and then have people recognize us for it, right? Okay, moving on, I want to talk about continuous learning and feedback. So I think it's super important when you're leading older employees or more experienced employees that you are making it a culture of learning and feedback. So a couple things that I've done and that I would definitely recommend that you do. Number one is seeking out opportunities to learn from those more experienced employees. And I kind of alluded to that earlier, but I think it's really important and interesting because people let their guard down and build trust with you when you have them teach you something, right? Think about it. When someone's teaching you something, it makes them feel a certain way. And I found it incredibly helpful to strategically pick out things I could have my more experienced employees teach me. And this, for whatever reason, seemed to reduce the feeling of, oh my gosh, I know more than my boss. How is this guy trying to teach me something? And it actually literally gave them the opportunity to teach me something. So I kind of reversed it, right? And by doing this, you're almost taking away the power. So I wouldn't say pick dumb stuff, but genuinely try to find something that those employees that are more experienced know that you don't. Could be literally anything. Could be the way they organize their day. Could be the way they communicate. Could be the way they talk with other employees internally. I mean, it could be literally anything. Find something you can learn, and instantly you're going to watch the guard go down of that person. Next one that I think is really important is constantly ask your team for feedback and put it into action. I made it a point to always ask those older, more experienced employees for feedback. And not only did I ask for it, I made it my goal to put it into action because I think we've all had those bosses where they ask for feedback, but they never put it into action, right? They literally never do anything with it. And, in fact, I even had a boss, and I've talked about him before. Oh, that lovely boss, where he would ask me for feedback. I'd give it to him and he would do nothing. He asked nothing, asked nothing, asked nothing. Eventually, he started asking and I stopped answering because I knew it was just an act. This is a guy who just wanted to ask me questions and do nothing with it. That's a waste of my time. So if you're going to ask for feedback, you better be ready to put it into action. As a quick side note, not all feedback needs to be acted upon. Consider the source, consider your own perspective. Of course, if the feedback doesn't apply or you have a different perspective than maybe the limited view of the employee, that's okay. You can choose not to go forward with it. But most of the time, your team's going to give you feedback that you need to hear and you need to put it into action. And moving on, the last one, we talked a little bit about earlier is don't be afraid to give feedback or coach those older or more experienced employees. And I'll start by saying, a lot of them are top performers, but they're not perfect, right? As humans, none of us are perfect, and they still need that feedback and coaching. And, unfortunately, I made this mistake where I kind of avoided this at first because I felt a little uncomfortable. And, a couple things happened. Number one, those teammates got away with stuff that they shouldn't have. And number two, the people around them, the younger employees around the age of myself, started to think it was unfair. They're like, why is Stuart never getting any feedback and I'm always getting feedback? Like, that doesn't feel good, Austin, right? Things like that. So I had to make the decision eventually that no matter the age or experience, everyone can improve, right? And again, if I'm the leader and I believe that about myself, why wouldn't I also believe the same about my older, more experienced employees? So do yourself a favor. Don't overlook helping or coaching those older employees. They need leadership just like everybody else. So again, continuous learning and feedback, super important. It's going to build trust. It's going to get guards down. It's going to put yourself in a better position with those older or more experienced employees. The last topic I want to talk about before we get into a story is I want you to get out of your head and go with the flow. So I guarantee if you are a younger or less experienced leader, you are going to feel some type of way leading more experienced people. You just are. You're going to feel insecure, and the people around you are going to feel some type of way too. That's okay. Just let it all happen. You are exactly where you need to be. So you can't fix that situation. Thinking about it, stewing about it, talking about it, not going to work. So number one, quit thinking about the age and experience difference. It's funny, my business partner, good friend, shared his favorite quote with me years ago. And it's simple. What you resist persists. So if I'm always talking and thinking and ruminating over the fact that, oh my gosh, I'm so much younger than my employees, how is this ever going to work? Guess what? That's going to start feeding its way into life, and it's going to inform my actions and behaviors, and people are going to feel that. So don't do that. Don't think about it. When you start getting those negative thoughts, quickly label them and move on, right? You can't prevent those automatic negative thoughts. They all happen to every single one of us. But what you can do is just label them. Oh man, I'm feeling insecure right now. That was just me feeling insecure. That's okay. Let me go ahead and just think about something else, right? When you get those feelings, label them, move on. You can't prevent them. They're automatic negative thoughts. We all get them. Just embrace them for what they are. Okay, the last one, and this one might seem a little counterintuitive, is I want you to let the employees get the age or experience thing off their chest. Sometimes people just can't help but call it out or talk about the age or experience difference or the fact that you're younger than them. That's okay. Let them do it. Talking about it or getting it off their chest is sometimes all that's needed. And, I don't want you to pretend it doesn't exist because that's going to make it worse. And I remember there's a couple of times in the beginning when this situation happened at my work when I was leading older employees, I kind of wanted to shut down the conversation. And then I realized, no, these people just want to say it once or twice and they're going to let it go. Now, what I don't mean is allow them to become disrespectful or to take a bigger place in the culture than it needs to be, but that's okay. We're not idiots. Like, yeah, I can see that I'm 20 years younger than you, and you can see that you have gray hair and, I have a baby face and can't grow a beard yet. Like, it doesn't matter. Those things, we know they exist. So let's just get them out in the open, take away the power, the uncomfortableness, and move on. So if you have some employees that want to bring it up from time to time or talk about it, I don't think that's the end of the world. Let's not pretend it doesn't exist. So I'm hoping, you got a couple of strategies. You know how to act the part. You know how to establish some set of values and figure out what you're going to be known for, how to lead by example. We talked a little bit about situational leadership and how you can adjust your style to those older employees. And then we talked a lot about continuous learning and feedback. How are you going to learn from those older employees? How are you going to make sure feedback is a two-way street? Those are the things that I really know are going to help you lead older or more experienced employees. And again, I said at the beginning, here's the secret. Effective leadership doesn't care about the age or experience level of your employees. Effective leadership is effective leadership, right? So what I want to do now is wrap up with a quick story. So I remember I stepped into my first branch leadership role, 2013, bank manager. I was 23 years old, the ripe age of 23 years old. I had a baby face. I couldn't grow a beard. I had a David Beckham mohawk, and I had never been a leader before. So there's the scene. I'm setting it for you. So my branch was comprised of like 10 to 12 employees, and half of them were older than me. And I would say like 3 to 4 of those folks had actually been leaders at some point. So even worse, right? And so to say I was nervous was like a complete understatement. I was freaking out. I was so worried that those older employees were going to take one look at their new manager and laugh. After all, who was I to lead people who were like 10 to 30 years older than me? I remember the first 3 months were kind of awkward. I was new to leading meetings, holding people accountable, and I was still figuring out like what my unique leadership style would look like. And that takes time, by the way. But eventually I made the decision that I was going to stop thinking about my age and lack of experience. I took my own advice and thought, okay, if I keep thinking about this and ruminating about it, like, what is this doing? So, when my employees made little comments or jokes about my age, I just decided to laugh it off. I made it my mission to help the team however I could, and I just ignored the little comments here and there. And what I did is I really made it an intentional focus to take work off their plate. I would do things like jump into a teller window and do transactions when we were busy, or I would take servicing or non-sales work off of their plate for the sales team, right? So they could focus on more important things. And I also tried to act the part and hold myself to a higher standard, right? I really wanted my team to forget that I was a 23-year-old kid. And so, I didn't talk about immature things at work. I made sure that I was dressed appropriately. I, limited the slang or cursing, if you will. And slowly, the team came around. They started to respect me regardless of my age. They saw I was focused on what mattered and that I recognized the value in each one of those teammates' expertise and experience and their age, right? And I got to tell you, this season of being a branch manager was probably my most fulfilling. It was really challenging because I was new and didn't know what the hell I was doing. But, I learned the basics of leadership. I made some really cool lasting friendships, and I really learned that it does not matter how old you are. You can be an effective leader. And I remember on my last day, my team gave me a handwritten card with all these farewell and well wishes, right? And one message stood out to me. It was from my oldest employee on the team. He was in his mid-50s, and he wrote, "Even though I'm old enough to be your dad, I learned from you. Thanks for your leadership and humility." And I got to tell you, man, that brings almost tears to my eyes thinking about it all these years later, because that's what I was going for. I wanted those folks that were older than me to still think, you know what? It doesn't matter how old this guy is. He is here to be a leader, and he is here to help us become the best version of ourselves, and everything else does not matter. And, I share that story, as always, never to brag or to put myself in a higher light, but just to show, man, this is what's totally possible. I'm no different than you. You can 100% lead older or more experienced people on your team. It just takes intentionality. It takes a focus. It takes holding yourself to a higher standard. It takes creating a culture of feedback and continuous learning. And that's how you do it. So here's what I want you to do this week before we wrap up. Here's my challenge. I want you to take out a piece of paper and start to define your personal core values. Maybe you've done that already. And if you have, fantastic. But my guess is you probably haven't. So I want you to think about the things like, what do you want to be remembered for? What do you want to promise to yourself? What do you want the team around you to emulate? And I want you to think of 5 to 10 things that you want to be known for. And that's a great start. I want you to write those down, put them in your notes app, put them in your phone, and I want you to think about them. And if you feel so bold, I want you to even share those with maybe your whole team or a few people on your team. And by sharing those things, you're going to put them out in the open. People are going to understand what you're all about, and it's going to help you hold yourself accountable even more. So I hope you got some value out of today's episode. I want to say thank you so much for listening. Make it a great day. This has been the Introvert Leader Podcast. Subscribe for new episodes every other Wednesday.